I'm so excited right now. I'm about to meet a friend I haven't seen in like 10 years, and she just published this book at the end of last year, just a couple months ago, and I'm just so pumped. We're gonna just talk all about her book, just catching up. That's her, I think, actually, right here. Hello? Where are you? I'm almost like shaking. I'm so excited to see her. Okay, we're gonna go get her now. We're gonna go get her. She's so cute. She's a hat girl like me. Eric's like, is she a hat girl? I'm like, if she is, we are kindred spirits.
I did not know how it's coming.
Did you get it? He offered to help us. Okay, I'm thinking we should mic you up so that way we can hear us. Is that alright?
Yeah.
We even set up like a little space for us to have a little bookstore chat. That's what we're gonna call it right now. I'm calling this a bookstore chat. Okay. I just wanted to place some context for how all this came about and what on earth we're doing sitting in the middle of a bookstore. So I knew you back in college.
That's
and
right.
I know your real name too, but you're now going by a pen name.
Yep.
J.A. Sailsbury.
Yep.
So what do you want me to call you?
You can call me Jay.
Jay?
Yeah. Just
Have you had anyone else call you Jay? Or this will be a new one. We'll have to figure this out.
Like at my church, no one knows anything about this, and so they're calling me, "Hey J.A.," and I'm just laughing inside, like this is really odd.
J.A. Did they know they knew your real name?
Some of them don't know my real name either, so they just think this is my real name, and I'm like, that's a little awkward. No, my parents didn't name me initials, but that's okay.
J.A. I'm gonna go with J.A. because I feel like that's ringing.
Okay.
That's ringing for me. So we knew each other back in college, and now you just wrote a book. We haven't seen each other in 10 years or more.
It's been about that.
I think it's been more than that.
Yeah.
But you just published your first book, which moved my heart and soul and mind and everything reading it. But before I even read it, I just, was excited to maybe connect with you, not knowing what the book would do to me.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't spit when I talk. So I'm curious, you wrote a book. Would you have considered yourself a book girl?
No.
No?
I am not a reader, so
I'm not either.
I know. So this is very foreign to me. So when I wrote it, I knew I was going to write it for people like me. Yeah. There was just something in me that said this story is for everyone. So I don't want to exclude people that don't typically pick up a book. And so the way it's written is very easy, and people that don't like to read are saying they're reading it in 24 hours. I just sort of laugh. I'm like, really? Please take longer. It took me really long to write this.
Oh, you felt that? Like only 24 hours?
Yeah, I was like, oh. But,
yeah. Well, it's funny. So you don't consider yourself like a writer. You didn't go to school for writing, but this book is incredible. For me, I'm not a reader, but I've read a lot of books. And I'm shocked at the beautiful quality of it. It flows so naturally. It's very easy to read. You're a good writer, really. You are. And so this was it was beautiful to read. Maybe you could give me a summary, of what the book is. What is it like, or what would you want someone to know about the book? Like a little snippet of it.
I've done my best to be very strategic when I have explained what this book is about. Back when I decided to write it, this was back in high school. I had thought about writing this story, but something in me kind of said, it's gonna get lumped into a certain category. And I knew it was a grander story than what this category would portray it as. And so I just sort of put the idea on a shelf, like no pun intended, but and thought something wasn't right. And so I really just didn't think about it for years. And then college came, more happened with the story. And I was in grad school and I was taking some classes and ideas just started rolling. And I realized then I was never supposed to write it in high school because the story wasn't done yet. And so it is a story that's really hard to put into words because it's unbelievable. It's a story that will take the reader on a journey, not only reliving the story that's in 1122, but it also takes you into your own life and really makes you look at your own story through this story. And so it is a true story, and that's what I have, even one of the endorsers said, that it's truth is stranger than fiction because it's an unbelievable true story. And I've had multiple people come and tell me, they said, if I didn't know some of this story, I wouldn't have thought it was true.
And that's exactly what I was telling you, that I had been exposed to this story through you in college, but tidbits of it, you know? And so now reading the whole thing, which still I'm sure only brushes the surface of it, I was just shocked that, you know, even through our interactions, that I didn't end up knowing more, or that it wasn't like top of mind, or like, you know, it was just incredible to see the whole thing. Just really mind-blowing. So
that's kind of the cool thing about this story, is that the family in the story, they dealt with everything that you're going to read about within the family. And even some of the family didn't know 75% of what was in here. And so a lot of this was shouldered with just a couple of the characters in here, or the people. They're not characters, it's real people. But and so while there were thousands upon thousands, including yourself, that knew tidbits of the story, they're all reading it now and saying, I didn't know. And so I think it says a lot about the family, and it also says a lot about everybody else and how cool it was for them to be in the story without even really knowing what was going on.
Yeah. Well, so that brings me to a question then about how you wrote the book. You mentioned like what you used and how you kind of compiled it together. So could you maybe just like talk about like that journey of you writing all of this?
Yeah, it was a very long one. So I told you in grad school, the ideas of how this is supposed to be laid out came to me based off of some classes I had taken. And in those classes, they went around what had happened in the story. So I was like, this is just perfect. So right away at the end of college, I don't know whether I knew this or somebody told me, but I was kind of prepared that this was going to take money. And so how much money I did not realize, and I may have just said no to the book. But so I had learned like sort of like a clothing distribution trade type of job while I was in school, and decided, you know what, I'm gonna start doing this on my own as my own business, and all the proceeds are going to go to fund this book. And it was so cool. The first like sale that I went to do this, there should have been a lot of obstacles in my way, but it was as if God opened up the doors of, no, this is for the book, and I'm trying to let you know this is your mission. And so like that sale, I almost like looked up and was like, yeah, you have a good sense of humor, because I would go in the boxes of clothes that I needed, and then it was almost as if the floor was opening up and it were just feeding me clothes and clothes and clothes. And that's not how these sales.
It's like a Mary Poppins moment.
It was so weird. And I was like, that's not how these sales go. And I would even look at people that were helping me and they were just looking at me like, this is odd. And I said, this just lets me know this is supposed to be. And so from there, I started by going to the beach by myself in January of 2015.
2015.
So you can start doing the math. And I just got it published in November of 2023, so almost 9 years it took. It was a very long process, lots of editors, not just one, many, more than one publisher, and so it was a big, long deal.
When you say more than one publisher, did you have more than one publisher publish the book, or that you went to try to get it published?
So I had talked to people that worked for publishers and actual publishers, and learned early on in that process that the chances of me getting my book published was not gonna happen. They look for somebody that has tons of followers, tons of email, like a large email list, and like one lady even told me, she was like, I don't care how good your story is, because of the amount of people that you have to buy your book, I couldn't even take your idea to the people that I answer to. And so early on I realized, okay, I'm not gonna go that route. I'm gonna go self-publishing. I could have gone publishing with like a lower scale, I guess, but realized they're gonna take all your money and you're still gonna have to do all the work. So I actually hired a self-publishing company, and you have to be careful with that as well. Another thing I learned is this business is full of sharks, and so they will take you for everything you have. And so I learned quickly in that there are certain types of publishers for certain people. If you want to just publish a book, then it would be safe probably to go with anybody. But if you're looking to take this and do something with it, you need somebody that's gonna let you have the reins. And so I figured out early enough with this one that they probably weren't the best fit, and talked to somebody else that I knew was writing a book, and they told me who their self-publisher was, and found a good one.
Nice.
So
Very nice.
I'm with one.
So I know that you were intimately connected with the story. When I knew you in college, that's how I knew about it, right, through you. But I'm curious, as the pen writer, like, how were you able to have all this detail? And like, tell me more about that process in writing it.
So, as you said, I am closely connected with this story, and for that reason, I was able to talk to a lot of the people in the story about kind of what they remembered going through it, and even some of them were able to give me journals that they had, and so it was in a way it was difficult to piece it. When I was talking with one editor, he said, you did really good at keeping the storyline going. He said, normally that's the hardest thing to do. And I said, that's kind of interesting you say that, because when you're getting pieces of the story from different people, they all kind of remember things a little bit differently. But then they would go back to their journals, and their journals would kind of all have it. So the journals helped me more with the timeline, and then when I figured out some stories within the journals, and some stuff I remembered from this story, and then it would trigger them to remember other things. So yeah, I went around and kind of asked questions, and
that makes so much sense. But it does seem like that was 9 years, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I had to take some breaks because you'll understand when you read the book, you have to take a pause and say, I need to recenter myself. And then I was working full time as well. I did the clothing business on the side to keep making money for this, and then I also worked another full-time job for regular everyday expenses. So I worked on this on the weekends. Sometimes I was working 80 hours a week between all of it, but I knew there was a purpose, and that would be something I would tell anybody that's going to write. Don't write a book unless you have a purpose in the end, a life-changing purpose. I knew this had to get in people's hands. And honestly, because it was a very difficult road, not only the writing of it, reliving some of the story, it was difficult, and then the whole finding the right publisher, the editors, and I mean, I had multiple editors say, you can't do that, and I was like, well, too bad, I have to do that, that's the way it's supposed to be written. And then I wasn't a reader, so I was like, it might not be supposed to be that way, but I know in my head it's supposed to be this way. So, but in the end, I always came back to what was the mission, and that's what kept me going.
So if that's what kept you going for this one, do you see yourself writing another book?
I get that question a lot, and more than I thought I would, because I was like, I don't know if this is any good. And
It's
now
such good writing. I'm like, are you going to write another book?
So, you know this, we talked about, or you just told me about this. It's sort of left open-ended a little bit. So I have thought about sharing more intimately about a little bit that goes on towards the end of the story. But I do feel like I have been given a talent to write stories and to tell stories. So I have a couple things up my sleeve, but that's about as much as I know right now.
See, I thought that was going to be left really open, but you just, I feel like you okay, yeah. All right, up your sleeve.
Yeah.
There's something up your sleeve, though.
We'll see.
That's awesome. Well, I do really want to talk more. You just kind of like dangled a bunch of stuff out there, and I want to talk more about the book itself.
Okay.
But I'm hungry. Are you hungry?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go grab some food and see if we can dive a little bit more into, so what is the book about, and like what is it like for me, even like having gone through the book, and we can maybe play off of each other a little bit as well, you know, since I got to read the book, and anyway, okay, let's do this. Now at local bookstores in the new and nonfiction.
Swap. Yeah, you almost.
No one saw it. No one saw it.
French dip and chicken.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
Okay, we have to talk about the book now. Maybe the contents of it or what we can expect in it. But your endorsements here, can we just go through those real quick? Because they really struck me. David Elliott here, he was on the series Jag. He says what you said earlier, simply put, truth is stranger than fiction. And he makes an appearance, doesn't he, at some point?
Yeah,
maybe. Oh, I'm not allowed to say
He's the foreword.
He's the foreword.
Yeah, he is the foreword in the story.
Yes, that's where I know his name from. So, but then also you have Jade Thompson Cravens.
Yeah.
Is that it? And this is tough. He says, I laughed and cried within the first 50 pages.
Yeah, and the thing is cool with him, he is a captain, or he was a captain in the U.S. Army, and a former JAG officer. And so for him to say that, I was like, okay, so it's gonna get those tough men too.
Okay, so we also have Michelle Crocker. It says cellmate here. Do you want to put any context to that for people?
No.
Fair enough,
You
fair
had to read that to figure that one out.
One of the things that struck me is how you've described the story here and your snippet. You know, the snippet I read on Amazon, everywhere. You don't quite tell me what's in the book. So it seems very intentional, but can you share that? Like, explain, like, what's going on there? Are you going to tell me maybe what is in the book? Are you going to tell anyone, you know, this is the story? Or, like, what were you hoping to get by this description of the book?
So, from the beginning, I did not want to share exactly what this story was about, because even for me, it was about so much more than maybe the topic it would be put into. And so I knew from the beginning, people would ask, or when they were trying to figure out how to market this, they said, who's your audience? And I always like cringed down, and I didn't want to answer the question. And they're like, if you don't even know your audience, you're not going to be able to sell this. And I was like, I do know my audience, but you're not going to like my answer. And I was like, my audience is everyone. And I know that's not typical. And I said, but this story is for everybody. And I said, I really believe it will reach people of all ages, and male and female. And I was like, you can tell from the people that have read it that it's doing just that. And some of these people that are endorsers did not know some of the story and were flabbergasted because they knew maybe one section of the story, and they were like, there's more? I only knew a little bit. And so I strategically wrote this in a way that even if you're not struggling specifically with the topic that's in this book or the hardships that this family goes through, it's gonna resonate to you in your life. And so I knew that, and I knew because of that I could not share the story, because the story is for everybody. It's so you can just live through your own life and live through your own hardships and really be able to take something from it and be able to help somebody else through it. And because that's what this story did for my life. And apparently it's doing it for people that are already reading it, just from what people are saying. One person called it their emotional workbook, and for me that hit hard, like that hit home, because I said, I wanted it to do that, but I didn't realize it would. And so that's why it's strategically written to draw you in, not knowing, even with the title. What is 1122? Is it a date? Is it a number? Is it a number of some sorts? Is it a year? What is it? And I had when I went around to the bookstores trying to ask people about it, they were like, oh, it's a thriller, it's a mystery. And I'm like, maybe so. And I was like, it does draw you in that way. So that was the whole point. And I'm sort of a gamester, so I think it's fun to play with people and try to get them, tell me more. No, you can't.
Leave them hanging. No.
Well, and there's too much that goes on in this story to encapsulate it in one category. It's just, there's no way you could write everything that goes on in this story in one little small paragraph. And I knew that going in, and I was like, but I have to write it in such a way that at least pulls them in. And that's why I put people's endorsements on the back. Because I said, when people start seeing what everyday people are reading, and man, I didn't know someone could even go through this.
So we do know, as you're kind of talking through, I mean, you know, testing the limits of determination and survival, this book will move you to moments of complete desperation, empathy, and strength. It's an epic story that will keep you on the edge of your seat, very much is. the last line says, bringing you to your knees. What would you say to someone who doesn't want to read something hard?
That's a good question.
What about someone who's enjoying things and life is good and we like motivational books and feel good, right? We watch feel good movies.
I say this book was written for you. The reason being is because you won't always be in that season. There are seasons throughout everybody's life that they will hit rock bottom. And what do you do when you're in those seasons? How do you get through them? And on the flip side, this story also reveals, what do you do when you're not in those hard seasons? How can you be an encouragement to somebody else that is in the hard season? Because if you're not, you're blessed. And so don't take that for granted. Go share with somebody else that is. Maybe you have been through something, maybe you haven't. Maybe you've been blessed with a life that's not had a lot of hardships. You still matter, and your life can be used abundantly. And so this is the story that's why I said it's for everybody. It's not just, yes, I know people going through struggles are really gonna resonate with it, but I have had people come through and say at the end of it, that were in the story at certain parts, and they said, I wish I had known, because I would have done more. And that's for you. That's for the people that aren't struggling. You do know. Now you know. There are people all around you that are suffering. What can you do to help? And so that's why I think it's for all ages, for all different seasons of life. There's a purpose in everything about this book, from the cover that people still don't know about, from what is written in the pages, how it's portrayed to people, all the way to the back of the book. There is a purpose, and that's what I hope when you're reading it, is to search for the purpose. Because you will find it. It may not be until the end, but you will find the purpose. And it is so cool because some of the ways that I knew I had to write it, I didn't know in the moment why it was supposed to be written in that way, but now as I'm hearing so many feedbacks, I'm like, that's why. Because they're saying exactly why I wrote it that way, but I didn't even know. And so that's what's been cool too, to see all these purposes, the reasons why I did this, the foreshadowing, all of it. They were to sort of poke the reader as there's a reason. I don't know what it is, but I feel like there's something more I'm missing.
Yes, yeah. I think this is really important for people to hear that haven't read the book, because that's how I felt throughout the book. That because it was so hard to keep going, but I knew I had to, and I just had to keep trusting, because you and I had spoken, and I kind of knew, something. I had to keep trusting the process. Like, as hard as it was to be in the space that I was in, or at that point in the book, or whatever, like, I had to keep trusting that it was coming around to something. So just, I think for anyone who hasn't read it and is thinking about reading it, I think that is what you just said was so important for them to hear. Like, trusting the journey that this author has given you in this book, I think will help them.
And to always keep in your head that despite the outcome, because outcomes aren't always going to be good, there is still good. And so I think it's so easy to forget about that when you're reading a book like this, about a life like this, and you really don't know what happens throughout the whole thing. Because it's the nature of the beast for this story. You just didn't know. And despite what happens, there's always hope. So.
try it again?
Just
answer that. Yeah.
There's pasta.
So we are down one book because we just met a sweet artist here, and I think she'll really enjoy the book. But it reminded me of something, which is why it was so sweet we got to meet her. Just to give a synopsis of my experience reading the book. Can't remember if I've told you this already yet, but when I was reading it, it felt like it was like I was intent of like, I have to read this whole thing. I was so absorbed in it, I couldn't put it down. Simultaneously, I felt like there's no way I could keep going. Like chapter after chapter. And you have short chapters. Like, I was like, how can I keep going? I don't want to read anymore. I can't handle the emotions. So you have these moments throughout the book, which I'm going to give away what they're called, only for a moment is right what you called them. And in these spaces, in this section, it gave me space to be able to process. It helped me to process not just what I was reading, but also my own stuff that was coming up through this, like struggles with hopelessness, struggles with the hard things that I deal with. And so I'm curious to hear from you, what was your intention in making those only for a moment, and what do you hope other people get out of it?
So when I was in the interview process and reliving the story that had happened, those only for a moments were times in this story where the family and the girl going through it really was able to escape from the horrific things that she was going through, that they were going through. And so really when I had this in mind to put them in there, I didn't know that's what they were until years later. And so I said, how many other people don't know that's what they are? And that's what these only for moments are used for, is to escape from the harsh realities of life. And just like you, I've had multiple people come to me and tell me, wow, I needed those. They were put in at the exact right time because I just couldn't take anymore. And it was like they were strategically put in the right spot because you knew you needed a break.
Yes.
And you knew you needed help to get through to the next day. Yeah. And so that's what they're there for. They actually worked better than I thought they were, because I got some pushback on them because it's different. When I put them in there at first, I had multiple editors saying, you can't do that. And I said, well, I'm going to, so I guess I won't use you next. Like, that's kind of how the process worked. But it's been really cool. I actually had somebody that didn't know anything about this story, and they're going through their own struggles right now, and they said this is an emotional outlet for them. It's giving them a way to voice what they're going through. And I was like, that's what they were intended for, is so another person said it put them in the heart of the story. They could feel what was going on. And then they said, and then I immediately went to my own life and started reflecting. And I said, you did exactly what they were meant to do. And so it's really cool to see that it's working in the way it was supposed to happen.
So what else have people said about the book, or what's the response been so far for you?
I think one of the cool things, because this is my first book, and I'm not a huge reader, I really didn't know if it was written well. And so I was so nervous about that, and at times I felt like I can't really push my book not knowing. And then I started getting some endorsements back, and it was funny because a lot of these endorsers have known stuff about this story. So I went in asking them, thinking they don't even need to read the book. They can just write something based off of what they know. And multiple ones said, no, I have to read it. I'm not endorsing something I don't think is good. And I was like, oh no. And so I knew if they liked it, then it was good. So now I feel like I can confidently go tell people it's a really good read. It's easy, it's super easy, and it's really well written.
It's easy to actually read.
Right.
It is hard actually
Yeah.
to digest.
Yeah.
In the best way. It's remarkable how there's so much heart in it, and there's so much hope and like stuff that just grips you. You got to keep going. It's amazing. Yeah.
Like you though, I've had people say they can't get through it.
Yeah. Like you don't know how you can. For me, I didn't know how I would, but I was very committed to it. I was so invested. I had to.
And then I also had family members of this story. The mom in particular that's talked about in the story say this doesn't even touch what the actual story was really about. And even some other people that know more details of it, they said you gave as much as the reader could take. And I tried to explain that to the mom, like, I can't say much more, it's hard to read this. And she said, I understand, but and I said, I think the reader will know too, that there's a lot more that happened that you just can't talk about. It's too much.
Oh my goodness, there'd be a sentence that I'd be like, there were like 4 things that occurred in that sentence, but you just wrote one sentence. What in the world?
Yeah, I had an editor, he was reading it and he goes, there was a couple spots where you had the same story like back to back. And I said, it wasn't the same story, it happened again. And he said, oh, we have to figure out how to do this because, and then he was like, you got to cut it down. I mean, I had to cut it down so much. He said, it's really 2 stories in one. And I said, I know, but it's got to be in one book. So.
Yeah, that's great. It's so good.
Yeah.
Whew, okay, well, on that note of taking a moment,
Yeah.
let's take a moment. I think we're gonna head home, honestly.
Yeah.
I just want
Yeah.
I feel like we've been around and done a lot, and we can maybe take a break even in talking, and then we'll finish up, I think, at home. Talk more about your future.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, you found it!
I did. I stopped and got gas, so I won't have to do it when I
Oh, that was a good idea.
I was like, it might be fun.
Welcome!
So my dog loved you.
Oh, I love you.
Yes, when my kids come home, they're just gonna love you too. So, man, we've gone through so much stuff, and I mean, now that the book is launched, what do you see 2024 looking like for you?
I would love to say I have a plan, but I've realized with this whole process, everything that you think is supposed to happen doesn't happen the way it's supposed to. So ideally, I've thought I just want the book to get out there. Yeah. And whatever ways it's going to do that, I'm kind of up in the air. I know I've told you about speaking before and just sharing more about this story, but the goal for 2024 is just to get this in the hands of as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Because I just know, especially with the seasons we're all in right now, it's just hard. Life is hard. And I just know this book will offer a lot of encouragement to people. And so that's what I'm hoping. Because right now, it's just gotten out to kind of the select ones that either have been a part of the story in some capacity or more people that just know me through my hometown. And so I feel like this is really exciting. This is the first big let's get it out there to the public moment. And so that's really fun. So yeah, I've almost learned not to make plans with this because it seems like my plans aren't the ones that are happening. It's just these random things that this is what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So of course I have things in mind that I would love to do with this, but I don't know if that's what's supposed to be right now.
Yeah. You did mention maybe something up your sleeve, which you're being evasive about, of course. Seems like good part of your storytelling in the book as well. But anything else, like in the future, any significant things that are coming for you, even outside of writing this book or how it's connected to the book?
Not really. I do have people that are starting to contact me with speaking engagements. Nice. And so that's exciting. But like I said, I'm not really sure what the next step is. I'm very open because I don't think it's going to be normal. Nothing about this story is normal, and even the process of writing it, nothing has been cookie cutter. And I even have had people say, why do you think it's going to be easy to do this when nothing in this story was easy?
Yeah.
And for that reason, I don't want to say what's coming up, because every time I do, that's not what ends up happening. Something even crazier, more than I can imagine, happens. So like even having the launch party, it had like almost 200 people there, and from what I've heard from other people, that's unheard of. And even then, I had like an editor come and he said, this is unlike any book launch party I've ever been to. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah, there's never food, there's never entertainment. He said, there's never this many people. And he said, I said, it's a party, I was celebrating. And he said, oh yeah. He said, he goes, this is awesome. And he goes, this was all. And I said, that makes sense. Like, I mean, obviously I didn't know what I was doing, so I had a party, and it wasn't a normal book launch, and which makes sense because nothing in this story has been normal. And so I don't ever want to put a label on anything because I feel like the possibilities for where this is going to go is endless.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it because it feels like whoever penned this, you think would kind of live that way. An understanding of we hold things loosely. Understanding that you don't know what's really going to happen. You don't know what twists and turns are ahead. And now here you are, like, sharing that with us, that is your life right now. That is what you are embracing as like a truth for your own life. Is to maybe have plans. What I'm hearing,
I'm a planner. Like, I like to have things. This is very hard because every time I'm planning, I'm like, why did that just get messed up? And then it's like, oh, because this was supposed to happen instead.
Feels like there is a grander story here. That's what you sense in the book, reading it. And I sense it in your life.
And
there's
I knew
a grander
it
story.
at the beginning too. I knew when I was writing it, and people, people were saying, "You can't do it this way. You can't write a book like this." And I just kept saying, "This story you cannot put in a box." And for that reason, I knew from early on, all I had to do was write it, because the story in and of itself would touch the lives of so many that there was nothing no plans I could write out that would amount to what's really going to happen with this. And that's how I felt from the beginning. It's how I still feel. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to sell a book. I have this piece that I know this story is going to change lives. I'm already hearing it. And it already has before I even wrote the story. So now it's just for the masses. Even though, you'll quickly learn tens of thousands of people were involved in this story, which makes it even more crazy.
It is going to be so cool. Maybe you've already had them, but I see so many more coming in of people that will suddenly get access to this book that didn't realize they had a connection to the book. And then they're going to be reading it and understanding that they were in the story, or something that they did impacted the story. Like, because there is a huge footprint from this book that, it's just like, it's crazy, the footprint.
I was telling somebody about that when I was sharing that I was coming out with one. And I said, if you were in this area at this time, you're a part of this story. You could be a part of this story. And right away they're like, what in the world? And they said, you're not going to tell us more. I said, nope. And they're like, we have to read it then. So that's why I can't wait. That's going to be so much fun to start meeting people that say, I was there.
That's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we kind of give details on how someone could maybe follow you or connect with you, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much, because from other parts of our conversation and from reading the book, this took sacrifice for you to write it. And I'm grateful because it's impacted my life. And it's going to impact so many people's lives, you know, but this is a hard journey for you too, writing this, for anyone who could write something like this. So I'm really grateful for the 9 years of your life, holy cow, that you have sacrificed for something beautiful. You see the good, but there's heart in there, I know. So I'm really grateful, and everyone who's reading, if they don't get the moment to share it, this is me doing it for you. So we will make sure that the links are available to you, either here on the screen or in the description, but can you tell people how they can either follow you or actually reach out to you specifically maybe for speaking opportunities related to the book or whatever you have to share,
So I am on Instagram and Facebook under J.A. Sailsbury, but the best way to reach out to me for speaking engagements is through my website, jasailsbury.com. That has everything you need to know about Instagram, Facebook, everywhere I am, and it's easy to access and it's real clear, so.
That's awesome. Okay, but not just reaching out to her. This is what this is all about, right? Is this amazing book, 1122. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it Barnes & Noble. Wherever you buy books, you should be able to get this.
It's all online right now.
Yes.
Strictly online.
Brilliant. Yes. So make sure you pick up a copy and buckle your seatbelt when you do. It's going to be worth the ride. I didn't mean to be so like weird with that statement, but it's true. And thanks for getting to know J.A. Moore and this story that she has put into this book for us. So thanks for spending time with me.
Yeah.
She traveled a couple hours to be with me here. This has been great. This has been so great. Okay, we will catch up with you guys hopefully some other way outside of this video. Thanks so much. Bye.